The world has lost Princess Diana at age 36, dead in a car crash in Paris.
You lived your life like a candle in the wind.
It's one of the most haunting performances in music history, a song that brought an entire nation to tears and silenced a cathedral of mourners. And yet the man who sang it says he can never perform it again. This was no ordinary ballad. It was a farewell to a princess, rewritten in grief, performed under the gaze of the world, and sealed away forever after one heart-shattering morning in 1997. You're watching Behind the Hit, where we uncover the untold stories of music's greatest moments. If you want more songs with secrets, tragedies, and unbelievable twists, make sure you subscribe. You're about to hear the story behind the song Elton John could only sing once, and the truth will stay with you long after the final note fades. In September 1997, the world stopped. Princess Diana, the people's princess, was gone. Her death in a car crash in Paris sent shockwaves far beyond Britain. The grief was unlike anything seen in modern history. Seas of flowers outside Kensington Palace, strangers openly crying in the streets, and TV stations broadcasting wall-to-wall coverage of her life and sudden death. Amid the mourning, the royal family and close friends began planning a funeral that would be watched by billions. And that's when one of her dearest friends, Elton John, got the call. They wanted him to perform, but Elton didn't write a brand new song for the occasion. Instead, he reached into his past and resurrected an old ballad from 1973, a song originally about Marilyn Monroe, and transformed it into something that would belong to Diana forever. Why that song? And why did Elton vow never to perform it again after that day? The answer lies decades earlier in a story of fame, tragedy, and the fragility of life under the public spotlight. In 1973, Elton John and lyricist Bernie Taupin were at the height of their creative powers. The double album Goodbye Yellow Brick Road was already shaping up to be a masterpiece, filled with rock anthems, soulful ballads, and lyrical storytelling. But among the flamboyant hits like Benny and the Jets and Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, there was a quiet, almost fragile song called Candle in the Wind. Bernie Taupin wrote it as a tribute to Marilyn Monroe, who had died just over a decade earlier. But it wasn't about the Hollywood gossip or the glossy image splashed across magazine covers. Taupin's Marilyn was Norma Jean, a vulnerable woman swallowed up by fame, crushed under the weight of the public's expectations. The opening line, "Goodbye, Norma Jean, though I never knew you at all," set the tone.
Goodbye, Norma Jean, though I never knew you at all.
It was personal yet distant, a farewell from someone who understood the loneliness that comes with being adored by millions but truly known by none. The metaphor of a candle flickering against the wind captured her life perfectly. Beautiful, bright, but impossibly fragile. The song didn't explode on the charts at first. It wasn't even released as a single in the UK, but it became a deep cut beloved by fans, a quiet masterpiece tucked inside a giant record. Still, no one could have imagined that decades later, those same chords would open the most watched funeral in modern history. Fast forward to the early 1990s. Elton John had long been a music icon, but behind the scenes, he had also become a committed advocate for AIDS awareness and humanitarian causes. It was through this work that he crossed paths with Princess Diana. Their first meeting wasn't about fame or mutual celebrity. It was at an event for one of the AIDS charities Elton supported. At the time, stigma around the disease was still intense, and very few public figures dared to be openly associated with it. But Diana, in her typically compassionate way, ignored protocol and fear. She shook hands with patients without gloves, embraced them, and treated them as equals. That act of humanity left a deep impression on Elton. It wasn't long before they became friends, real friends, not just acquaintances who posed for cameras. They could laugh together, share private conversations, and confide in each other in a way few could. By the mid-90s, their bond was well known in certain circles. Diana attended Elton's concerts. Elton accompanied her to events, and they supported each other through difficult times. But in the summer of 1997, their connection took on a heavier weight. Just weeks before Diana's own death, they attended the funeral of their mutual friend, fashion designer Gianni Versace. Elton later admitted that Diana was his emotional anchor that day. Neither of them knew that in a matter of weeks, the roles would be reversed, and he would be the one standing in grief at her funeral. August 31st, 1997. The early hours of the morning, news bulletins began cutting into programming. Princess Diana had been in a serious car accident in Paris. At first, the reports were confused. Some said she was injured but stable. Others hinted it was worse. Elton, like millions around the world, clung to hope. But soon, the confirmation came. She had died from her injuries. Elton was devastated. He later described the news as like a punch to the gut. Diana wasn't just another famous person whose passing he would mourn from afar. She was someone who had sat at his table, laughed at his jokes, listened to his fears, and trusted him with hers. In the days that followed, the royal household and Diana's family began arranging what would become one of the largest televised events in history, her state funeral at Westminster Abbey. And then came the request. Buckingham Palace reached out to Elton and asked if he would perform during the service. It was an honor, unlike any other, but also an impossible task. What could he sing that would honor Diana's memory without feeling hollow or staged? The answer didn't come from Elton's own pen. It came from Bernie Taupin, his lifelong songwriting partner. Rather than starting from scratch, Bernie suggested something radical: take Candle in the Wind, the song about Marilyn Monroe, and rewrite it for Diana. At first, it might have seemed like a stretch. After all, Marilyn and Diana had lived in different eras, on different continents, in vastly different worlds. But Bernie saw the parallel instantly. Both were women adored by millions, trapped by their public image, and taken far too soon. The rewrite was done in record time. Bernie replaced Norma Jean with England's Rose. The lyrics shifted to reflect Diana's charity work, her compassion, and the way her life had been consumed by media attention. The famous line, "Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will," remained because it was as true for Diana as it had been for Marilyn. When Elton saw the new lyrics, he knew instantly this was the song. Not just because it fit the occasion, but because it was deeply personal. He wasn't just singing for a global audience, he was saying goodbye to a friend. And yet, even as they finalized the arrangement, Elton had one rule in his mind. This version would be sung once. September 6, 1997. London was hushed in a way that felt unnatural. The streets leading to Westminster Abbey were lined with thousands of mourners, some holding flowers, others standing silently. The rest of the world watched on television, an estimated 2.5 billion people, making it one of the most watched broadcasts in history. Inside the Abbey, the air was thick with grief. Royals, heads of state, celebrities, and ordinary citizens all gathered under the towering arches. Elton sat at the grand piano, dressed in a black suit, his trademark glasses now tinted dark. He took a breath, placed his hands on the keys, and began. The opening chords were soft but carried an unmistakable weight. When he sang "Goodbye England's Rose," the words seemed to hang in the air, suspended in that cathedral silence. Cameras captured the royal family, the casket draped in the royal standard, and faces streaked with tears. Some later said it was that moment, hearing Elton's voice tremble on the final notes, that finally allowed them to cry. For 6 minutes, the world's grief had a soundtrack, and yet, even as the final note faded, Elton knew this could never happen again. In the days following the funeral, Elton John and his team made a decision that would change the course of music history. They would record a studio version of Candle in the Wind 1997 and release it as a single, but every penny would go to charity. No slick marketing campaign, no big-budget music video, just the raw, unvarnished emotion of a single performance, preserved in the studio exactly as Elton had sung it at Westminster Abbey. The public response was instantaneous. Within a week, the single had sold over 3 million copies in the UK alone. Globally, it raced up charts in more than 30 countries. By the end of the year, it had sold more than 33 million copies worldwide, making it one of the best-selling singles of all time. And unlike most pop hits, this one didn't come with a summer tour or a round of talk show performances. There would be no late-night piano renditions, no encore at Madison Square Garden. This wasn't a song to celebrate, it was a song to remember. Yet the sheer scale of its success raised a question. If the world loved it so much, why wouldn't Elton sing it again? In interviews after the funeral, Elton John made his feelings clear. Candle in the Wind 1997 was not a song for public entertainment, it was a song for Princess Diana, and for that day alone. He described the performance as probably the most surreal moment of my life. Playing in front of the royal family, knowing billions were watching, was overwhelming. But what made it impossible to repeat was the personal weight of the moment, the knowledge that the woman he was singing about was lying in the casket only a few feet away. To sing it again, he felt, would strip it of that sacredness. He even turned down offers from major events, tributes, and charity concerts where the song might have raised millions more. His stance never wavered. Bernie Taupin agreed. He said the song belonged to the collective memory of that day and should never be reinterpreted or reused. It was, in their eyes, a one-time gift, and one-time gifts are meant to remain unique. The public's connection to Candle in the Wind 1997 went beyond sales numbers. It became, in many ways, the unofficial anthem of Diana's memory. People played it at home while watching the funeral coverage. It was heard at candlelight vigils and played in public squares where mourners gathered. Even years later, it would resurface in moments of remembrance, though never through Elton's live voice. Critics sometimes debated whether it was appropriate to rework a song about Marilyn Monroe for Diana, but most listeners didn't care about the origins. To them, the song was Diana's song, and the money it generated for the Diana, Princess of Wales Memorial Fund helped support countless causes she had championed. Today, Candle in the Wind is unusual in music history because it has two separate lives. The 1973 version is still performed by Elton John, a beautiful, melancholy tribute to Marilyn Monroe that lives on in his concerts. The 1997 version, however, exists only in recordings from that year. No concert goer will ever hear it live again. No charity event, no royal commemoration, no anniversary will bring Elton back to the microphone for it. That separation is part of what gives it such power. It's not just a hit single, it's a preserved moment in time, untouched by overexposure. When you hear it, you're not just hearing a song, you're stepping back into a single morning in September 1997. For all its record-breaking sales and enduring fame, the truest legacy of Candle in the Wind 1997 lies in the image of Elton John at the piano in Westminster Abbey. There's a moment, near the end, where his voice almost cracks, just for a second, before he regains composure to deliver the final line. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will.
The candles burned out long before.
It's a line that feels almost too perfect, too painfully accurate. And then just like that, the song ends. No flourish, no lingering outro, just silence. The silence said as much as the music. In the decades since Diana's death, Elton has kept his vow. He's performed the original Candle in the Wind for Marilyn Monroe, but never the Diana version. He's spoken fondly of her in interviews, supported her charities, and shared memories, but the song remains locked in that single, unrepeatable moment. That's what makes it different from almost any other hit in music history. Most songs grow over time, shaped by endless performances and reinterpretations. This one was frozen, sealed away by choice. It's a reminder that some songs aren't just art, they're acts of love, sealed in amber. And sometimes the greatest tribute you can give is to never try to recreate the moment. If you were moved by this story, subscribe to Behind the Hit. There are countless songs with hidden histories, heartbreaks, and moments that changed music forever, and we're here to tell them. Because sometimes, the most unforgettable hits aren't just songs, they're memories you can hear.